Hey, everybody, welcome back to our virtual happy hour. It's Tuesday, a little different than our normal Thursdays, but it's still fun and it's still amazing. I got a great guest on our show tonight, a good friend of mine that I've known for a very long time and a great lover of beer. I want to introduce Chris O'Leary to the show. Chris, thanks for being part of the show.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks for having me.
Awesome.
And you
Chris,
know what? I'm
tell
going
us.
to pour my beer. By the way, sorry, I felt like I couldn't. I felt like I couldn't officially pour the beer until it started because no one walks into an actual happy hour with the beer poured already. So
Exactly.
there we go.
Well, before we even get into that, Chris, tell us what you're drinking on that side there so we
Oh,
can talk about what I'm drinking as well.
yeah. So I'm having the extra. It's a really hard label to read, actually. It's a cool label, but this is Extra Shipper. It's a collaboration between Other Half Weld Works and the Veil. Just a IPA, hazy IPA, shocker. I know from Other Half and those two other breweries also known for that. And picked it up at Other Half a couple weeks ago.
Awesome. Well, I'm drinking, if we go to the beer camera right here, I'm drinking a Connecticut brewery. This is Counterweight. I've been really into Pilsners recently, and this is their workhorse, which is their German-style Pilsner. So if you're out there now, like Chris has already done, crack open your beer as it's flowing uncontrollably and pour it into your glass. Make sure you check into Untapped and use the venue Untapped at home to tell people you're safe out there and also be able to see what everyone's drinking around you on there. It'll be the first venue that you pop into your thing. So I've done a poorly job here with my pour. Hopefully you've done better on your end. So raise your glass right now and cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Awesome. Well, Chris, tell us a little bit about your what you do at Brew York. I think that most people in the New York City area know a lot about you, but love to hear more about what you're doing within your Brew York website.
Sure. So I've been writing Brew York for, oh my goodness, 12 years almost. It'll be 12 years later this month. It's really just a resource for New York City beer drinkers. I don't review beers. I don't review venues really. It's really just where can I find good beer? What are the breweries that are open? What are the beer releases? What are the major events? And really just kind of being a resource, not just for people who live in New York City, but also people visiting New York City too. So if you're coming to New York City for the first time and really don't know, what places to visit, if you're in search of good beer, there's a page on there that has like the 25 venues that we recommend. I couldn't narrow it down more than 25. It's just not fair. There's too many good places. But yeah, it's really just a resource. And during the pandemic, it's really become a place for people to find information about what breweries are open, what breweries are delivering beer, what tap rooms are. We're going to kind of do a roundup this week of what tap rooms have reopened in some fashion with outdoor seating, since that's all that's allowed right now. So it's really just an information source for the New York City beer drinker. And then on the side, on top of all the other New York centric stuff I do on social media, I'm also a bit of a beer tourist. So I document my beer travels. I'm up to 1,929 breweries visited. So just a few off 2,000, which I was hoping to do Memorial Day weekend, but looks like that'll get pushed off a little bit. But yeah, just kind of constantly on exploration for new places and new beers to try.
Yeah, I mean, I've known you for a long time. I've always known you as a traveler, obviously, with COVID and things of that nature. It makes it very difficult to travel for beer, but you've definitely traveled to a lot of different places all over the world for beer. And we've talked about this numerous times, but you kind of take us through your journey of why beer tourism is a real thing, because people always talk about it being this thing that, Asheville is beer tourism, but explain to people maybe not know a little bit about, what drives that travel and what gets into your excitement in terms of traveling to new places to try beer.
Well, I've found a lot of my travel for beer has resulted in me experiencing a city completely differently from someone who's not there for beer.
Right.
I've really found great places to eat, great hiking trails,
Right.
great scenic drives and things like that just from talking to the people around me at breweries. Because as much as beer tourism is a thing, you know.
Mhm.
A lot of people just want to drink local and they'll go to their local brewery and I'll be the only one in there from more than 5 miles away on a
Right.
Saturday afternoon, and people are asking me about New York as much as I'm asking them about whatever city I'm in. So that's really one way that I've loved to experience a city through beer. The other thing is sometimes you'll meet some of the first or second brewery and they'll just be like, "Hey, let me show you around."
Right.
you
Right.
know,
Right.
like what are the breweries you're going to? Or hey, let me make a list. Or they'll take out. I'll talk to a bartender at a brewery and they'll just take out a sheet of paper and start writing down the places that they recommend.
Yeah.
And I find myself going into any city I visit without a real solid plan. Just kind of, I have everything mapped out in terms
Mhm.
of where the breweries are. But sometimes I'll go to a place that, a brewery that had opened the week before or was their opening weekend that I
Right.
wouldn't have known about without talking to other people. So, and let's be honest, beer people tend to be good people too. So,
Yeah.
when you strike up conversation with complete strangers who are as passionate about beer as you are,
Right.
they're going to kind of steer you in the right direction. I feel like.
Absolutely. If you joined us late, we're talking to Chris O'Leary, who is the editor of Brew York. You can find it at brewyorknewyork.com. It's an all-encompassing blog and informational source about New York City beers. If you have a question for Chris, use the comment on your platform. We'd love to be able to put Chris in the hot seat and ask him some questions about New York City. Maybe you want a recommendation for the next time that you're able to travel there, or a good bar recommendation. Chris is your guy when it comes to that. So make sure you use the comments there. And I want to shift the gears toward, New York City beer in general. And I obviously, I lived in New York City for a long period of time, and we've seen the growth of craft beer in New York. And I think maybe we'll kind of assume that, New York City has no breweries because there's not a lot of space for the brewer to establish themselves because of the fact that it's Manhattan. But there are a lot of great breweries outside of in the boroughs that are around the area. What do you kind of look at the whole New York City craft beer scene? How has it changed over the last couple of years in the positive way?
How it's changed. I think that what we've really experienced is what I call the family tree of brewing,
Right.
uh, where you have like one, two, or three breweries in a town that kind of employ people who end up going out and opening breweries of their own,
Right.
and we've seen that explode even further in New York City in the last few years. I mean, the prime example of that is Other Half.
Mhm.
Other Half obviously um, was really a brewery that was created by a brewer who had been experienced as a brewer working for another brewery in New York City,
Right.
and Greenpoint. Hold on, Greenpoint Brew Works.
Yeah, the old name.
Beer Works, yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, because there's Greenpoint Beer and Ale Company now. But
Yeah.
so Sam had worked there and was at the helm there for a while, and when he started brewing his own brand, he was even brewing a few batches out of there before they got started. So you saw that, and then you saw people branch out off of Greenpoint and then off of Brooklyn.
Mhm.
And now you've got people who have been apprenticing at smaller breweries who are opening breweries of their own as well. Um, I think that there's no real trend in New York City beer right now. I'm thinking about the breweries that have opened recently, and it's hard
Yeah.
to say that they're going in any one direction. I mean, yeah, there are breweries that are specializing in hazy IPAs, but there are also breweries that are trying to maintain a well balanced portfolio of beers. And Wild East is one that comes to mind that just opened back in February. They
Right.
their real their real concept is to have like one IPA available at a time, and it's a great
Right.
IPA, but they also make fantastic lagers.
Mhm.
They true to their name, also making they're moving in the direction of barrel aging and wild fermenting stuff, but they're not, they're just not everyone's going in that general direction.
Right.
So it's hard to say that there's a trend in New York City right now. I think there's just a lot of exciting things happening.
Yes.
And hopefully they're continuing to happen. But, Manhattan is going to get their first production brewery in a very long time,
Wow.
with Torch and Crown. And, they're going to be open. They're already selling beer out of their space. So hopefully they'll be producing and opening their tap room once it's safe to do so. I think that there's also the spin-offs of breweries, of existing breweries. So you've got other half working on a brewery in Williamsburg, a small facility in Williamsburg. You got Finback is opening its space. They've already opened it in Gowanus in Brooklyn, which I think a lot of people are really excited about because it's brings the beer much closer to Brooklyn, because that trek out to Glendale, Queens, never enjoyable.
No subway out there. So,
no, and I'm saying that as someone who only lives like 3 miles as the crow flies from Finback, but it still takes me about 45 minutes to get there.
Yep. Yeah, I know that all too well. I think that one of the cool things about New York City beer is that it's incredibly community focused, right? Because everything is really close to each other from a perspective of people. I think obviously within COVID, that's taken a big hit to a lot of the breweries and how they deal with it. What have you been hearing about what have the local New York breweries have been doing in terms of trying to get through this particular situation? A lot of them don't have food places or outdoor spaces because that's a premium when it comes to New York City. What are they doing to get by in terms of those type of things?
A lot of them, we are very lucky in New York State to have really have the laws change, or the regulations get relaxed right away to allow breweries to sell to go and to deliver direct to consumer and to ship within New York State. So I think that helped quite a bit in terms of keeping some breweries afloat, or at least keeping the beer moving. I know that I tried to buy beer through delivery from every brewery that was delivering in New York City. I think I got pretty close. I think there was 1 or 2 I didn't get to, but I still bought beer from them at retail stores. So I tried to support all local breweries that I could. I don't. It's each brewery has been trying something slightly different. I don't think anyone's really there's not a pattern where everyone's mimicking the same approach, but the vast majority of breweries in New York City, that I've visited to pick up beer, tended to have other people in there buying beer. So that's promising. And, I've got my local is KCBC, which is just a few blocks from me in Bushwick in Brooklyn. And the folks working the tap room there for just can sales said that, on weekends they were really busy from start to finish, from open to close. So I can't say that that's necessarily going to allow all the breweries in New York City to survive through this, but I'm hoping it's going to help some stay afloat, and the demand with some of the popular breweries in terms of delivery and shipping allowed even more breweries to hire back employees that they had laid off from the tap room, which I thought was really crucial to keeping those people in the industry employed. And then you have other half, speaking of people who are employed in the industry, who created the concept of the Altogether beer, which I happen to have that right there, which helps support, people in the industry or people in the hospitality industry in general who were impacted by all the closures. So, it's really been great to see how breweries have responded to this, and the overwhelming support for the Altogether project is
Right.
that's been fantastic. I mean, there's a dozen plus breweries in New York City, I think, that did it. So
Yeah, and a lot around the world as well. I mean, a lot of
uh,
breweries have pitched in to kind of do their own kind of rendition of it, and then obviously that's kind of spurred the Black is Beautiful campaign as well.
yep.
I think that's definitely been a big success to these kind of causes like beer in a sense. And I think that it's really exciting to see all the revenue come in from those particular breweries that are going to help people in their area, specifically with COVID. But one of the things that's why I brought it up is that New York City itself does not have those big spaces for outdoor dining and outdoor areas, and so we obviously need areas for people to be able to support their breweries there. And it's great to see that these projects, starting in Brooklyn from other half, it has helped the environment and help the areas the people try to either pick up and delivery. And I think the other thing too is the laws. We talked about that a lot in terms of them changing. I know in Connecticut now breweries can directly ship to consumers. And, I think in New York, I think that's the same thing as well. We talked to Three's Brewing Company recently, and they can ship all the way upstate everywhere via online purchase. Do you think these laws are going to stick after COVID is released, or is it going to fall back to kind of old school thinking when it comes to these things?
I really hope they don't go back to the way they were. I think we have shown the fact that it's good for the industry to do this, and there are very few negative consequences from doing this. So
Right.
I'm hard pressed to come up with a reason why breweries could not ship beer direct to consumer through the system that was already in place for wine.
Right.
It's like
Exactly.
if you lived in New York State, you could already get wine shipped to you. So why couldn't you get beer shipped to you?
Yeah.
It's a little it was a little ridiculous that it took a global pandemic to get us to this point, but I'm really hoping that some of these aren't clawed back. And one thing I will say, by the way, you mentioned the breweries in New York City very often lack an outdoor space. And what I would plead to people in upstate New York who are really happy to have their local breweries back, which do have outdoor spaces and can now use their indoor spaces as well because of the phase that they're in and the regulations around phase 3 upstate.
Right.
Please order from New York City breweries and have the beer. Please continue to support them because they will continue to need your support. I mean, there's only a handful of breweries in New York City that are lucky enough to have outdoor spaces. I mean, let's look at it this way. I mean, even the ones that aren't, I mean, Strong Rope has an outdoor space, and the outdoor space consists of just a few tables out on the sidewalk because that's the best that they can do given the situation that they're in. So just the fact that things have reopened doesn't mean that those breweries aren't in need of support, and the best way you can support them is by buying their product. So
absolutely. We have a comment here from Brichetto that says "Stay strong, breweries of the world," and put that on the screen. It's definitely something we stand for as well to get these breweries out of a hole. I mean, I think we were seeing a huge boom in this area, and we'd hate to see something like the pandemic kind of bring it down. There's a lot of creativity out of there, amazing beers that are coming out. So it's really cool with respect. And thanks for that insight, Chris, on the COVID-19. But let's shift gears to a question from the audience here. I'm not going to even pretend to pronounce this person's name because I'll probably butcher it. But what is the most interesting beer, Chris, you've had recently, and why?
The most interesting beer I've had recently. Let's see. So one that comes to mind is the Equilibrium Einstein's Delight. It is a triple IPA, a 10% IPA with orange and marshmallow.
Oh, nice.
I guess it's modeled after some sort of dessert. I wasn't familiar with the dessert, but to me, it tasted like a creamsicle, an extremely boozy creamsicle. I hate gimmicky beers, but I loved that beer. Loved that beer. So I think that one stands out the most to me. I mean, I've been really digging like simple, easy drinking beers right now. You know,
Right.
this is a rarity for me to have an IPA in my glass lately because it's summertime, it's warmer,
Hmm.
and tons of breweries are making fantastic lagers now.
Yes.
I mean, I've had a steady stream of beer from Threes in my fridge.
Yep.
They make incredibly clean, simple beers, and sometimes I don't know. I find simplicity interesting too. So, so
Right.
you might say that some of the most interesting beers I've had have been the most simplistic ones, the ones that just get everything dialed in so perfectly that I can't find anything to criticize or I mean I don't really critique beer, let's be honest. I'll drink something that I would probably criticize, but I think that some of the like simple easy drinking stuff I find fascinating in the sense that breweries are capable of making beer that is just clean, simple,
Right.
and awesome. You know, it's not throw the kitchen sink into the beer anymore. It's take the kitchen sink out of it.
Absolutely. I think, I've said this on the show many times. I'm getting back to the more lagers and pilsners as it's super refreshing in a summertime situation. So I definitely support that for sure. Talking about up and coming styles, well, technically pilsners are not really up and coming styles, but they're becoming more popular again. Yeah, I'd love to get your insights on on the New York City brewery scene. We talked a little bit about some of the areas that they've been improving on, but what are the 3 top New York City breweries that may not be on someone's radar that they should definitely check out when or if they're able to come to New York again in the future?
Ooh, this
It's
is
a tough
tough.
one for you.
Yeah, no, this is putting me on the spot, and I know I'm good. Someone's going to be pissed off at me no matter what I say here. Um, so, oh gosh, I have to go down to 3. All right. I'll tell you what. Wild East, I mentioned them earlier, right out of the gate. If I'm going to try to pick like 3 that are vastly different, I think that the Wild East definitely fits that bill as vastly different from a lot of the other breweries in New York City in terms of what they do. Their Czech Pils was absolutely wonderful. They make a great mild. How many times?
Yeah, you don't see
How
that very
often have you
often.
heard that? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They make a great mild. Yeah. So I think they're one. Okay, if I'm gonna go, let's see, number 2. I have to say Threes. Like this is almost unfair because like they're like 2 blocks away from Wild East too, but I really do love the beers that they make and everything's just really dialed in and yeah, some people chase after their IPAs, but I'm perfectly satisfied ordering a case of their Pilsner, their Vliet, and whatever other they had a beer. They have a beer they put out every year, gender neutral. That's just light log, kind of a light lager with lemon zest, and it's just so refreshing, and that just stands out. Um, okay, so then you have your pick of IPA breweries because I gotta have a hazy IPA brewery in there, right?
Absolutely.
And there's just too many to choose from. I mean, it's like a choose your own adventure kind of thing. Like, do you want to venture out into Queens?
Mhm.
Finback Finback does that really well.
Yep.
If you want to go to the mecca of hazy IPAs in New York City, go to Other Half.
Yep.
KCBC makes great stuff.
Mhm.
Um, you know, Grimm is another one.
Yep.
There's too many to name. And then you know, and that's just when I'm talking about the beer. When you talk about the experience, it's a totally different thing. And this is something that I talk about a lot when I'm traveling too. Is like
Mhm.
the breweries that stand out to me most might not even be the ones that make the best beer, but have the best atmosphere. So for that, like Fifth Hammer is a perfect example of a
Yeah.
brewery that's like constantly like packed with people and families and dogs, and like you go on a Saturday afternoon and it's just a boisterous crowd, and they have a really diverse beer selection too, and it kind of is reflected in the people who go there. They're not just Haze Bros or
Right.
it's a really different environment. So I think about places that have great tap rooms too. That's a completely different list.
Yeah.
I wouldn't tell someone to go to Other Half for the environment,
Right. Right.
because mostly the environment is your elbow to elbow with other people.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
in the before times, as we say.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you ever went into Other Half before they even expanded, it was even
Oh
smaller
yeah.
from that perspective. So it's crazy to do that. But I think that's a good list. Good list there in terms of what we're looking for. But I think the best part now is I think we've got some questions. But now let's put you on the hot seat with even more questions. We have a special game that we play on these shows called the lightning round. So we'll put the speed round up here. We've got a clock. This is the first time we've used this feature. And we'll put this up here. A clock that we're going to run for 2 minutes.
Wow.
And we're going to ask some really important questions. And hopefully this all works well. We're doing it live. There we go. So I'll ask the first question, and then I will basically put it up on the screen if I stop freezing. There we go. All right. First question here is top 3 beer cities you have visited beside New York.
Asheville. These are gimmies. San Diego and Denver. Has to be Denver. I love Denver.
Awesome. If you were a beer style, what would you be, Chris? The common question everyone asks.
I'm a lot more boring than people tend to think I am, or how I come across. So, adjunct lager.
There you go. Very nice. One next question is alternate universe. Beer does not exist. What do you drink?
Seltzer. Flavored seltzers. Without a doubt. I mean, that's what I'm drinking when I'm not drinking beer. So
there you go. We'll do one more question here. If you owned a brewery, where would you place it? Any city in the world?
Any city in the world? Oh, geez.
I'll make it easier. U.S. Only U.S.
Okay, only U.S. All right. Well, yeah, this. I would probably put it in Narragansett, Rhode Island.
Yes.
Home state. It's my home state. It's where I grew up, and it's a beach town. It's a college town. It's college town adjacent.
Right.
Yeah. I'd probably put it there. Then I'd serve some chowder and clam cakes.
I like that. As a fellow New Englander, I appreciate that, especially with the chowder and clam shakes there. So why don't we go to the chat here for one more question here before we close up? We'll put Tom on the screen right now. Tom, he's talking about gimmicky beers before. Decadent out of New York is another one of those. Speaking of gimmicky stuff, what do you think about their path? Obviously, being a contract brew for a little while and getting their own place up in New York, Westchester County. What's your kind of sense on them? And we've had them obviously on the virtual festival that we did a couple of weeks or months ago. What's your kind of take on them?
I love that people are flocking to that and that they're succeeding in doing something so gimmicky. I don't like gimmicky beers, but I don't think anyone else should drink or not drink a beer because of my opinion. That's been my mantra all along. Whatever I say on here, if you don't like the opinion that I shared, cool. That's fine.
Let's have a beer over it.
Like everyone has different palates and different, but the stuff they do is just so cool, and I think it brings people into beer that might not necessarily come into beer otherwise. It's just the whole concept of just weird beers. Is just really it really appeals to people that just know beer from IPAs and lagers, and then from the contract situation. There's some people who don't necessarily like the concept of contract brewing, but in New York City alone, we've seen breweries, actual physical breweries, spawn from contract brewing or tenant brewing. Grimm is one that comes to mind. Bronx Brewery started as a contract brewery. You've got plenty of breweries that started without their own brewery, and then they grow into a space, and that's what Decadent did, and they did it attached to one of the most awesome beer shops in
Yeah.
all of New York State too, which
Yeah.
definitely helps.
Yeah, we had Bob Olson from Bolero Snort on last week as well. Same
Yep.
scenario with him. Started out contract brewery and trying to get up there. So I think, Decadent is one of those, brands and breweries up there that has an interesting twist on almost every single beer they do. And, it's great for someone that may not be into beer, like you mentioned, getting into that kind of thing and more of a dessert beer or a food-based beer. It's kind of interesting perspective there. But, I think that it's just growing rapidly in New York City of all the great things that we do in there. So, it's amazing to see the kind of growth that we've been seeing in New York. And I'll look for hopefully more of this to come once this whole COVID thing goes away, and breweries will get started doing what they do best, and the city will start to kind of rise up again, from a lack of a better word, and hopefully continue on that path there. Because I know there's a lot of great breweries that just, again, don't have that space, or just trying to do door to door kind of thing. And while that's good for the most part, it's interesting to see how that business model is going to go out in the future from that side. So
yeah, no, again, if you're in New York City, support your local brewery. If you're upstate, support some New York City breweries. Spread your money around a little bit, because they could use all the support they can get right now. And I'll be doing my part, because I'm going to go upstate in a couple weeks and visit the breweries up there. So I'm spreading the love upstate. So.
Awesome. Well, Chris, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Any last words that you want to spread where people can find you on social media, about your website, or anything else you want to share?
Yeah, it's brewyorknewyork.com is the website. And then on Twitter and Instagram, you can find me at brew_York. Always love to hear from beer drinkers with recommendations and cities that I'm traveling to. So once we can all start traveling again, I love your heck, before we start traveling, let me start to make my plans now, so I can hit the ground running as soon as I feel comfortable getting on a plane again.
Yeah, exactly. And you've actually known, to a lot of people might not know this, but you were on a airplane by yourself, as I recall, a long time ago. So if you just search Chris O'Leary's name on the internet, you're probably not going to find the Brew York. You're probably going to find your picture of your plane up there.
Some CNN article that during a very slow news week in January 2015. Yep.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Chris. We appreciate it. And I'll drop you down here. Thanks very much. All right. Well, we've kind of had a little technical difficulties, but we appreciate you hanging with us this evening. I want to tell you a little bit about what's happening this week on the virtual happy hours. On Thursday, that's coming up on the 9th, we're talking to Afro Beer Chick, that she's going to be on as well, talking a little bit about all the things in Chicago, Illinois, and a little bit about her blog itself and some messages that she tries to go after. And then Saturday, we're going to be talking to Phil Leinart of Brewery Omegang. That's at 2:30 this Saturday at the 11th. So really appreciate you checking us out this evening. Hope to see you back here on Thursday. And cheers, everybody. Thanks for watching.